you'll need one of these. Thank you so much for coming to join us. So I suppose the first debate, the first question has to follow the debate is, who do you think won?
In between the two?
Yeah.
Me. No, first of all, thank you for giving my 10 minutes of popularity in such a sunny Monday. What I should say, big data, it is not entirely clear what it means. I think we may all agree there are various definitions available, but I think we all understand and have something in mind. So this ability to process in an entirely new manner an unbelievable amount of new information, and this will change a lot our life. And therefore, this is something comparable to the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century. I will start from the conclusion. Big data, for me, means big data protection, but not because fundamental rights should prevail. Big data is not only personal information. Many other information different than personal data will be processed. I fully stand for the title of the White House paper, Big Data, Sizing Opportunities and Preserving Values. But the data protection viewpoint should not be marginalized. Big data is a fundamental challenge for data protection principles. But in between the two schools of thoughts, I'm in the middle. There are those thinking that we don't care. We in the data protection community, we already in the 70s moved from manual files to automated processing of personal data, from analogic to digital, from the pioneeristic e-commerce to the information society. And therefore, there are experts saying that the big data debate is instrumentalized to depart from our values. On the opposite side, there are those thinking that such a challenge is so key, so revolutionary, that it's time to entirely depart from existing values and principles. My conclusion is that the question is not whether to apply data protection principles, but how to make profit of big data to open an entirely new chapter, where we focus on safeguards instead of requirements, where we apply this principle in an entirely new dynamic way, where we fairly consider the implications for not only privacy and data protection, but for other values. In my view, it is simply inconceivable to think in terms of success of big data without opening a debate in terms of transparency, in terms of accountability. And I will be the first in the data protection community opening the door for a new deal in terms of prosperity, economic well-being, and future, thinking positive. But who will benefit of big data? And are these benefits, so important to depart from the values? From which values we have to depart? So in a contribution I publish on my website, I analyze one by one which challenges I see in the short term. We have just reached a political agreement on the new EU law, which lasts for at least 2 decades. 2 decades is more than a century now. But I see a chance to see the notion of identifiability disappearing. Perhaps the notion of data subject will disappear. We will be co-data subject. It's so popular to speak about co-controllers, co-processors. Perhaps we will have co-data subjects. Not speaking about data retention periods, purpose limitation, and also transparency, which is key. So I would like to stimulate this debate, and reject entirely the false dichotomy in between a data-driven perspective, economy, and privacy and data protection as an obstacle. I don't think this is the right approach.
Okay, right. So it's all about finding the middle way. You're just, just a classic,
Always.
Carefully steering your way between the Scylla and Charybdis of excessive use, but still getting the benefits. You talked about transparency a lot, and we saw in the video that a lot of the time people really don't understand what they're letting themselves in for. It's like, I really want to play solitaire on my phone. Oh, I want to look at my camera. Yeah, fine, whatever. I'm so bored. Now, that's really dangerous, because if you say, well, everybody go ahead and be transparent, but consumers don't understand what they're being transparent about, how are you going to educate people about that as well?
This is why we're here. Me too. I don't read any one of the, notice and choice approaches we have, and the reform we recently passed, politically speaking, does not consider consent as the only prerequisite. So transparency means to better understand who is in control of what and where, to better understand how my data are used. When we speak about big data, we think to health, we think to other public interests, but there are also some private interests that can be better considered. The reform speaks about pseudonymized information, and perhaps a lighter approach can be identified, where lighter doesn't mean lowering the safeguards. It doesn't mean that we depart from the principle, but it seems that we do a balance of interest, which is missing in one of the school of thoughts. I mentioned it, and it is implemented in a little bit old-fashioned way in the other school of thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I can pick you on something that Ken mentioned in the debate, which is this question of the use of data versus just collecting it all, right? And what people are agreeing to. Do you have any views on how it's used versus just hoovering everything in at the beginning?
I have full respect for Ken. He did a brilliant performance in Mexico City by opening the International Conference of Privacy and Data Protection Commissioners. But as you say in English, I see his point. But I think that this is not a big problem. By a legal viewpoint, strictly legally speaking, there is no space for such a vision. Even the last jurisprudence from the two courts in the EU specify that the collection as such is to be considered as a processing operation, and therefore as an interference when where unjustified. But I stand for his recommendation to focus on harm in terms of scalability, in terms of, graduating the relevant safeguards and investing energies on the risk-based approach. We cannot apply the same principles to every kind of processing operation. So it's, again, a 50-50.
Perfect. And let me finish by asking you a question about scalability. So, and the jurisprudence that has come from the courts, from the ECJ and stuff over the years. Are there any lessons that you've learned while looking at the way that data is used within the EU institutions that I think are super important when it comes to scaling it up for the whole of Europe?
Yeah, making a lot of progress. I just published my survey. We too do surveys, and as explained in details in my website. Few days ago, you will find the full report on the EDPS website. We see how some largely big institutions are improving better, while others, particularly some delocalized agencies, are still, not entirely bad guys, but there are some homeworks to be made. We see some proactivity and fantasy from brilliant data protection officers, and I think this is something to be considered in terms of lesson learned, while others perhaps can do their daily work and follow the workload in a standard way.
Okay, perfect. So you can have all the data in the world, but the human who's in charge of it ultimately has to have the right idea.
My main message to the audience is do not consider data protection as an obstacle or as a waste of time. And my recommendation is to be involved in the debate I've just launched on ethics. I don't think that data protection can give all the answers to the kind of questions we are discussing today. But at the same time, I think that technology, just because certain perspectives are technologically speaking available, should not dictate the solutions and the values. So it's an interaction, and therefore we have to work together.
Fantastic. Giovanni, thank you so much. That was super interesting. I'm sorry we just had such a little gap.
My pleasure.
It was really great of you to come and answer the questions. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you.
Good one.